I want to share this time-lapse of an illustration featuring the main Stranger Things characters in a completely nonsense crossover that will hopefully make sense as the process goes on. One small disclaimer, as you can probably tell, I have a very strong accent. And there's not much I can do about that. While the drawing unfolds, I'd also like to share a stream of thoughts I have about the final season of the show. I'm not
particularly
good at organizing my ideas. I feel the need to do this anyway. This finale felt empty. Where are the plot twists everyone talked about? Where is the most heartbreaking death? The emotional impact of the situation? Where is the heart? And why do so many fan theories feel more interesting and make more sense than the canon ending? Honestly, with this series finale, beyond the lore of the different worlds and Louis' purpose, I was also hoping to finally understand Mike's character arc, the reason behind his behavior, especially in season 4, which never made sense to me. As it stands, he remains the most enigmatic and least understandable character of them all. Cause and effect? I didn't understand many of the connection between Moment A and Moment B back then, and I still don't now. Let's imagine for a moment that Eddie had never existed as a character. Without Eddie and his sacrifice, Dustin's behavior in season 5 would make no sense. There would be no triggering event to justify it. That's exactly how Mike has felt to me in the last 2 seasons. A character who acts the way he does, but without a trigger. As if Dustin were spiraling without Eddie ever having existed. I don't like Eleven's character arc, and I don't like Will's either. To me, their arcs share a very similar moral. After everything Eleven has gone through since she was born, the lab, her exploitation, her battles against the Demogorgons, against Vecna, was this self-sacrifice really necessary? Was it just thrown in to give us something tragic? Bittersweet? Did Eleven really not even try to put an end to being used as a lab experiment once and for all? I hate that a character like Elle, who has always been portrayed as a fighter, ends up surrendering without even trying. Yes, I've seen the theory that Mike suggests that she faked sealing herself in the Upside Down, possibly with Kali's help, in order to escape on her own later. But is that really what it is? And why would she keep something like that hidden from Hopper? Real life is one thing, and I don't want to touch on sensitive topics in a way that diminishes people's real experiences. But fiction is a tool that is
deliberately
guided in a specific direction. That's the difference between reality and storytelling. In fiction, you choose the final moral, the message you want to leave behind. And I hated the way the story suggests that a girl born into an abusive environment can only escape the cycle of abuse by ending her own life. When I really think about it, Will's arc carries a similar moral, even if it doesn't explicitly involve suicide. Will grows up in an abusive situation with his father, and in a context of neglect. Joyce is a wonderful character. She's not absent because she's careless or selfish, but because she's trying to keep her family afloat. Still, that doesn't change the fact that Will and Jonathan are neglected children, and that kind of neglect, even when born out of necessity, deeply affects a child's emotional development. This cycle of abuse continues when he's kidnapped. I'm intentionally keeping the term abuse vague, because no matter how you frame it, psychological or otherwise, we're still talking about abuse inflicted by humans and monsters onto other human beings. What comes out of all this, because of rushed and hollow writing, feels like this message. You, the outcast, the different one, the abused and neglected child, learn to love yourself, because that's probably the best you'll ever get. At most you'll have your friend's acceptance, but don't expect romantic love to come easily to you. Settle for this. I don't want to be misunderstood. Self-acceptance is fundamental. Support from family and friends is incredibly important, and never guaranteed. I'm also fully aware that the story is set in the 80s, and that there have been and still are many vampires out there. But this is the lingering undertone the story leaves me with when it comes to Will. A cycle you never truly escape. A lack of real opportunity to move beyond it. Yes, that's the random boy in the epilogue, but the way I interpreted it is just a mental projection of Mike, imagining what he thinks will or did happen. and in any case, that boy adds no emotional depth to Will's journey. Another thing I want to mention is how Will's feelings for Mike were ultimately downgraded. Mike wasn't just Will's gay awakening. By framing it that way, we completely diminish the profound existential or spiritual crisis Will went through. It gets reduced to just a harmless crush meant to help him understand himself, something superficial that was never meant to lead anywhere anyway. Because wanting too much would be wrong. Is Tammy. If Mike was only ever a narrative tool, romantically important solely as Will's gay awakening, and not significant as a genuinely loved person, then why not resolve Will's arc of accepting reality back at the end of season 3, for example? What we're left with in the end is the idea that Mike's role within Will's emotional storyline was just that, a crush meant to trigger self-awareness. And that story could have been told with far more care and sensitivity, without dragging it all the way to the very end. A crush is something you get over relatively easily, like Dustin gets over his crush on Max in a love triangle with Lucas that is thankfully resolved quickly. And what you don't need to get over and you can't get over is your own sexuality. That version of the story would have worked just as fine, just as well. Will becomes aware of who he is, comes to terms with the fact that his feelings won't be reciprocated, and moves on from Mike, while season 4 and 5 still focus on self-acceptance, self-love, and learning to live with one's identity in a time when being anything other than heterosexual was especially difficult. That's not what happened. Instead, the issue was stretched and pulled until the very last moment. So if you're going to drag it out that long, then make it mean something. Either Mike returns those feelings or there are other meaningful narrative consequences. Make it make sense. Let's say Mike doesn't love Will back. Then use that in a different way. For example, let Vecna manipulate Will, twisting that unrequited love into anger, frustration, or resentment. I'm not saying I would have wanted to see that necessarily, but at least it would have had narrative purpose, and we could have made peace with it. Instead, the gay character in the story ends up being used as a tool for Vecna and as a tool to reinforce and reconcile a straight couple. Twice over, insulted and sidelined at the same time. At times, it felt like watching a mediocre Italian TV drama. What about all that build up through half of season 3 and season 4, where Eleven clearly felt the relationship with Mike was unbalanced, where the issue was that he couldn't say I love you. And then in season 4, Mike delivers that big confession, but is literally pushed into it by Will. It's basically, okay Mike, now you say this so she can feel empowered again. Mike finds the motivation to express his love through someone else. Someone who not only encourages him, but actually puts words to his emotions, channeling them through Eleven's supposed feelings, filtered by Will. From Mike's perspective, those are Eleven's feelings, mediated by Will, but we as viewers know the truth. Those are Will's feelings, using Eleven as a mirror, as a shield, a way to speak honestly without exposing himself to risk. That scene was supposed to be a clear, sincere, emotional confession. Apparently, the canon story all along is simply that Mike and Eleven love each other. Period. No doubts allowed. It's honestly ridiculous. That the show keeps trying to sell them as some great epic love story on the level of Lucas and Max. After all of this, in season 5, Mike is still unable to express his feelings. What I perceive now is something that feels almost one-sided on Eleven's part, and I'm not saying Mike doesn't care about her. Of course he does, he loves her, but not in that romantic sense. I haven't been able to see them that way for at least two and a half seasons. People are now trying to fill the void left by the plot, the writing, and the lack of chemistry between characters with increasingly elaborate theories. For example, the idea that the story didn't really end the way we saw it, that the true ending hasn't happened yet, drawing on the myth of Kamazots, which is explicitly referenced in the season. The worst part is that these theories actually make sense and are genuinely interesting. But by now it's clear we're not supposed to dig that deep. When something doesn't add up, it's not because it will later, it's simply bad writing. It was bad writing. Take for instance the complete lack of chemistry between Mike and Eleven, especially in their goodbye scene. Mike's actor can't even bring himself to properly touch the character he's supposedly in love with. His hand just hovers there, stiff and awkward, in what feels far more uncomfortable than dramatic. I've seen comments on Instagram trying to justify this by saying that Millie Bobby Brown is now married and has a child, and that Finn is a respectful man. Come on. Do people not know how many actors are married, have children, and still play romantic roles involving intimacy with other characters? They're actors. There are also actors who openly refuse to do kissing or intimate scenes. One example that comes to mind is the Indian actor Shah Rukh Khan, who has
rarely
agreed to kiss on screen, and yet, despite that, he still manages to convey chemistry with the character he's meant to love. He can express attraction, affection, emotional closeness without crossing personal boundaries. So, what are we even talking about here? And that's all. Hope you enjoy this crossover with Wings Club. No, that gets it, Wings Club.